Okay, let's get started. And let's do a first little demonstration how Kivy in Python works. The first thing you always want to do is you want to import the app class. So let's say from kivy.app import app. That imports the app class and already brings a lot of functionality, which we'll see in a moment. What we also want to do is we want to import the widget class. So we say from kivy.uix.widget import the widget class. That's already good. And let's try to start with the most minimalistic way I can think of. Let's define a class. And let's call this, because we want to add some buttons later, let's call this buttons A and B. And it inherits from the app class. So it inherits the functionality Kivy built into the app class. And the next thing you want to do is you want to have a build function in order to build your class. It needs a reference to the class it's building up. And we need to define a root widget. And I explain in a moment what that means. So let's say root widget here is an instance of the class widget. And think about a graphical user interface with lots of graphical elements and visual representations. And they are all widgets, and they are ordered and organized in a widget hierarchy. And the widget which sits always on top of that hierarchy or on top of that widget tree is the root widget. So it's the mother of all widgets. Every widget, every element we add to the screen and to the graphical user interface is actually added to the root widget or is added to a widget which has been added to the root widget before. So that's the way we have to think about that. And now we could already start to see something, I guess. Let's return the root widget and let's get this executed by saying buttons A and B dot run. Okay, I think that's it. Let's see what we get. And what you see here is we get a nice little window. It's the Kivy window for the root widget we have here. And Kivy provided us already with all the functionality you have in a good and solid window. So we can move this around, we can resize this. It provides basically all the functionality you would expect from a window. And since Kivy is a cross-platform concept, it would actually give you a window with that basic functionality on an Android phone, on an iPhone, on an iPad, on a Mac computer, on a Windows computer, no matter what. So it will work with basic functionality, what you expect from a window on that respective platform. So let's close this up. Let's close the terminal. And let's now add some elements. And what we want to demonstrate here is buttons. So let's import this. So let's say from kivy.uix.button import the button class. And let's define a button here. Let's call this button A. It's an instance of the class button. And buttons typically have a label, and labels in buttons in Kivy are stored in the attribute text. So you say text equals a label, and let's try to be creative here. Let's just call this button A. And now, since we have a root widget and we want to add that widget, which is a button, to the widget hierarchy, we need to add this to the root widget. So we say root widget dot add widget, and we say button A. That's basically it. Let's see what happens if we run this. Okay, so our window, and actually I forgot to mention, but the title of the window, if you are not specifying it differently, is the name of your app class here, which we defined, our own little class. There is a button now. We can push that button. You see it indicated by highlighting it, but it's ugly because it's in the lower left-hand side corner. It's somehow cut off here, and the label is too big for the button. So we need to customize this a little bit. And the way we are going to do this is by giving the button a position. And you do this by saying button A dot position. And that equals now coordinates. Let's place this on 300 on the X direction and 600 on the Y direction. And let's also make it a little bigger. So we say button A dot size equals, and let's make this a square button, 200, 200, should give plenty of room for that little label to appear within the box and not going cross-border. Here we go. So we have button A. It's placed in our GUI. We can press it, but nothing happens so far because we didn't wire this up. So let's invent another button here. Let's say we have a button B. Button B is inheriting from the button class. It has a label. For consistency reasons, we call this button B. Let's also give it a size and a position. And what I wanted to show here, I guess, is that you could also directly address the X coordinate of the button and the Y coordinate of the button. So we could say button B.X equals, let's use the same X coordinate as button A, 300, and we could say button B.Y. And we want to place button B below button A. So let's step down from the 600 we specified here to 300. And then, of course, we need to add also button B to the widget tree. So we have root widget.add widget button B. I realize sometimes it's quicker to write down the stuff than copy paste, but if you have longer code snippets, it might be convenient if there are only small changes like an A changing into a B to use the copy paste functionality of the Spider editor. And actually, I didn't mention at the beginning, I'm working here in the Anaconda system, which provides Spider as an editor and is very convenient because it colors basically different elements in your code in a way making it easier to find things and also finding mistakes. So let's see what this does. Okay, we have button A, we have a button B. What we forgot is to give button B a size, making it look nicely. So we need to do this here, and we could again copy paste the size of button A and could call it button B size here, run it again, and then it should look nice and tidy. But in the same way as we can address directly the X and Y coordinate of the button, we can also do the same here by saying a button has an attribute width, and that's 200 in our case, and it has also a height. Sorry, equals 200. Let's see if this works. Here we go, 2 buttons, we can push them. Nothing happens because we didn't wire up any functionality so far. Now, in order to do something meaningful with that button, we need to define a method which reacts to the button click. And we do this by defining a method within our class, buttons A and B. And we call this pressed button. We need to give it a reference to the class itself. And we also need to hand over an argument, which is the button pushed. And the way we want to show the reaction to a press button is we want to write something in the terminal here on the right-hand side. So we say print, and then we say just simply the button pressed is, and now we want to find out what button has been pressed, and that's where this little argument here is for. So we just say button dot, and we know the button class provides an attribute which is called text. So we can fill in text here. And then it should actually find out by itself which button has been pressed. Is it button A or is it button B? Let's try to run this. Okay, we want to write in the terminal window, but surprise, surprise, nothing happens here. And as people probably already figured out, nothing happened here because we didn't connect the button definition of buttons A and B with that method within the class buttons A and B. So Kivy provides us actions for this, and that's actually like similar for all kinds of applications you're going to program with Kivy. There are actions attached to classes or within classes which you can use, and the one you want to use here is on press. So that's a Kivy functionality which realizes that a button has been pressed, and then you call within the class, so make reference via self, the method we defined in our class. So let's say pressed button here. Let's copy paste this. And let's see if this is enough to make that button reacting to our push. So here's the window, button A, and you see here in the window, whenever we push the button, it says the button pressed is button A, and the same happens to button B. And the magic behind this, of course, is hidden in that little argument here. in the class method which we implemented in order to let them recognize via the text attribute what label is corresponding to the button just pressed. That's almost it. The only thing I wanted to mention here is that you would never, in a larger code snippet or program, just call the application here. You would always want to check whether you are in the main module of your Python code. And that can be verified via this statement. So we say simply if name equals main, which is referencing the main module of the application, then we want to execute buttons A and B here. And let's see what this does. It should give us the same functionality as before. We have button A here, we have button B. Based on the argument in the class method, it recognizes buttons A and B nicely. And the only difference you have here is, and the background for this is simple. Think about a Kivy app having a lifecycle, and there is one entry point for the execution of that app lifecycle. And that module, which constitutes the execution entry point, is called the main module. And you just want to make sure in larger and more complex program environments that you execute only in the main module what you want to execute and not in the wrong module or the wrong place. And in order to make sure you're in the main module, you have that little if statement here, and then you can execute the program.